Also, one of the questions that was asked, and I wanted to specifically address the question from a town staff perspective. We've heard comments at the prior meetings. We've seen written comments that was presented to the Planning Commission in your packets. The question was really looking at what are the setbacks required specifically for the producing and curating toxic chemicals language that's identified in the land use code. And in that land use code, there's not a definition for producing and curating, and there's not a definition for toxic chemicals. A lot of the information that was presented to you tonight on behalf of Antia Group, Mr. Zemba from Sanborn Head, Leah Schneider from Larimer County Health, we're trying to answer that question on what are the toxic limits. But I also wanted to share this image with you and look at what staff evaluated prior to all that new information being presented. And what we looked at initially was this property is zoned industrial. The materials identified in the hot mix asphalt plant production process include aggregate materials for sand, gravel, recycled asphalt, and asphaltic cement. And looking at the interpretation for what is toxic chemicals, that same language category includes animal slaughter, and those raw materials don't have anything to do with animal slaughter, but in order of magnitude from a land use perspective, they're really not even in the same category. Considering toxic chemicals, the thoughts that come to staff's mind are pesticides, Roundup, paint solvents, thinners, explosive manufacture. None of those things are the criteria that we felt were the intent of that additional setback. And so the aggregate materials involved in asphalt production didn't trigger any concern for staff for the toxic chemicals. Looking at the setbacks, we did identify early on with the Board of Adjustments process, the 1,000-foot setback for residential. And we've included in this graphic the 1,000-foot buffer for residential, so you can see what that looks like from the source of the emissions. We've also included the 800-foot setback, which was the variance approved by the Board of Adjustments. And we went a step further and we wanted to at least highlight what that 2,640-foot setback looks like on the map and show you where that is impacted. In the staff report, we also included additional bulleted information for the other circumstances that 2,640 feet apply to, which included schools, religious land uses, medical facilities, and none of those types of facilities are within any of the identified setbacks, including the 2,640-foot setback. And a couple of the key indicator locations are identified here with dimensions to them to illustrate what that area looks like. So in this evaluation, what staff was really trying to help answer the question, why isn't this greater setback distance being looked at? For all those reasons I just explained and highlighted in the staff report, staff doesn't feel that the toxic chemicals is a factor here in our initial evaluation. And subsequent to that initial evaluation, the information prepared and presented by the different presenters tonight with review by Larimer County Health and Colorado Department of Health and Environment identified that all of those emissions levels are significantly below the threshold levels that require additional evaluation, which staff feels confirms the appropriate setbacks were considered by the Board of Adjustment in that particular application.
I think the question, here's the question is, so they don't like the determination of the Board of Adjustments. The legal process then is that you appeal it in a court of law. It's not appealed to us, and it's not appealed to the Board of Trustees. Correct. What they're proposing is that we have the ability to say the Board of Adjustments got it wrong with the setbacks. Therefore, this needs to be returned back to the Board of Adjustments. And the question is that true or false?
And it's an interesting question. I'm not sure it's a true or false answer, but I don't think that this Planning Commission has the ability to say that the Board of Adjustments did things right or wrong. That's their purview and only their purview. And if a decision by the Board of Adjustments wants to be looked at as correct or incorrect, that is appealed to district court, not this Planning Commission.
So I think I asked this question of you at some point that the Board of Adjustments has ruled, and there's a time period for appealing that ruling, correct?
That's correct.
And that time period has passed, correct?
That's correct.
So there's, I don't know what, that's done, right?
From town staff is that decision has been made and the appeal period is